Hello and welcome. Today on the show, we're going to give it a squeeze. Coleman's original English mustard and Mr. Mustard's sweet and hot. And isn't it so? This is the finest bunch of mustards to ever do a podcast. We're really glad you came by here today. Hope you stick around. This is Soft Spoken.
Welcome back to Soft Spoken. We are the barely comedic and somewhat, slightly, sometimes informational podcast talking about various sauces, condiments, and dips. On my right shoulder here, we have...
Hello, my name's Tori. We're here to talk about some sauces here this evening. We're really glad that you came by and it's going to spend some time with us. We really appreciate it. Welcoming us into your home or your car, wherever you may be. But to my immediate right is our good friend Eric.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're able to tune in this week and listen to us.
And I'm your other fucking co-host. Thanks for the pass there, you piece of shit.
Yep, we got AP here, too.
Big PPAP.
Who only refers to himself as Big PPAP.
Big PPAP.
No one else does that.
No, well, it's an earned nickname. I think we've discussed before. So you're looking a little bit more, you're awake, which is a better than
rare
you
thing for me.
are. Yeah.
A little more well-rested this week than I was last, that's for sure.
So you're looking you're looking pretty well-rested, but you seem to have maybe an injury, perhaps, or on your thumb.
Yes, I did burn the shit out of my thumb about an hour ago, pulling a hot steak out of the oven where I had it resting. Oven mitts are a great thing. A lot of people these days only cook in the microwave, and apparently I'm one of them.
So was this an oven mitt failure or was this a human logic error?
This was definitely a human logic error. I actually pulled it out of the oven, set it on top of my range with the oven mitt, put the oven mitt down, and then proceeded to try and take the food off of the skillet with my bare hand.
Wise move.
Smart.
Oh, yeah. Well, bare hand and tongs, obviously.
How much time
Tongs?
elapsed between the two?
Oh, I let a whole whopping 5 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. And you famously don't own forks, is that correct?
He has one fork.
One, normal fork. I don't have serving forks.
He doesn't use it for eating, though.
How about a chafing fork?
It's a hair spinning tool. I'm
Toilet
pretty sure.
fork.
I learned from Ariel.
You talking to Mermaid?
Yes.
Okay.
What did she call that thing?
It's definitely called
A snickerdoodle?
a thingamabob, I think.
That's a cookie.
Well, I know that. But what does she call it, the thing?
You got me. I have no
We're
idea.
going to have to look this up now. It's going to bother me the whole show.
This is the Disney trivia show.
And you, so you got this injury here and you proceeded to put nothing on it, is that correct?
I held an ice cube on it for
You've been-
a minute.
Oh.
Prancing around like a wounded dog the whole night.
Well, the blister is right at the bend, and so it's just got the permanent hitchhiker thumb right now.
Don't you have aloe growing in your home as we speak right now?
You know I do. I
Right
was
next to
trying to
the
remember
fire
what you
starter.
put on a burn. Aloe, that makes sense.
Come on. No Neosporin, no nothing. And I have a 55-gallon drum of burn cream at my house after my burn incident earlier this year.
Tori did lose an entire, half of your arm, is that correct? From the, what do they call it, from the elbow down?
From
That's
the elbow down,
not a total
forearm.
arm loss, but what was that? You dropped a nugget into a vat of boiling oil?
Hot oil. 350-degree oil.
Reached in elbow deep before you felt the thing.
That's right.
Master of pain.
And then he smelled something good, so he left it in.
Took a big chomp out of my arm after it was said and done. As a matter of fact, I battered and floured my other arm, and I stuck that sumbitch in there too and took a chomp out of that. It was even better than the first.
Can I ask what type of sauce you dipped your arm in after that?
Well, I almost passed out from the pain, but from what I can remember, I should have used some of these mustards we're going to be getting into here shortly, but this may have been at Hardee's at the time, so I may have used some of their horseradish.
Interesting. I actually went to Hardee's for dinner tonight.
It's delicious, isn't it? It's great.
Yeah,
I have still yet to ever be to a Hardee's.
It's delicious. It's terrific.
We should go. They have sauces here, right? We can try some Hardee's sauces, right?
I mean, outside of ketchup, there is the they're big on roast beef, so they do this. It's the same lineup. Here we go. Ring the Arby's bell. Ding ding. We're mentioning Arby's again. But their sauces are very similar to that.
Do I dare ask who came first? All I know is Arby's. I've never even heard of a Hardee's until I came to Pittsburgh.
Interestingly enough, on the West Coast, Hardee's is considered Carl's Jr., which is an awful strange name for a fast food outfit.
Yeah.
Now, that's blowing my mind. So I've been to a Carl's Jr. out on the West Coast.
Same thing.
They got crazy stuff out there. They got like breaded zucchini and, like, from what I understand, all types of craziness.
Well,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I can lend a little bit of insight to this because they actually started off as two separate companies. and then they were later merged into the same company, and they basically generally have the same fare. They do differ in some of their naming conventions. So, for example, tonight one of the things I had was a Big Hardy, I believe is what it's called, but it's essentially their ripoff of the Big Mac, whereas I believe in the West Coast that's called the Big Carl.
Right, and that's probably what I remember more. I have to admit, I have only ate out there once on the West Coast. Drove out there with a buddy of mine who was actually going. He was my college friend of mine. We drove out to California. We rented a car in California, and we actually drove it to Arizona where his job interview was. We flew into California because I had family there, and that was where we decided to stay. While we were there, he was like, "Oh, we got to try out Carl Jr.'s." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. I'll go along."
Do you remember what you had?
I don't. It was just a burger. I mean, it just tasted like any other burger joint, as far as I'm concerned.
I think they knock breakfast out of the park, personally. I think their breakfast is great.
They do a good greasy breakfast. That was when I was playing football in Ohio. That was what people would always get so they could heartily puke after the game.
Still blows my mind that you talk about Hardee's in Ohio, and I never even heard of it.
Well, that was the only fast food restaurant in my small rural town for many years. We had to drive out of town to the next nearest town to go to McDonald's.
Wow.
All we had was Hardee's. Yeah, so, I mean, it's nothing super special. They have, I think their thing is kind of like they do, kind of like Burger King, they do like a flame broiled thing, which I think
absolutely is, yeah.
I think it's more of in reality, I think that's a spray that they spray onto the meat, but.
Incorrect.
I think it is. I think it's a meat spray.
Dude, you're talking to a former Hardee's employee. I know all the ins and outs.
He's bound by NDAs. He's not allowed to reveal the meat spray.
I'll have
meat spray. That's terrifying. Right there. That's right up there with pink slime.
I'm dating myself here, but at the time when I worked there, they made fried chicken, and I was known as the dude. If Tor was making chicken that night, you best go in there and get yourself a 2-piece. I mean, I was told by a woman. She went by Peaches. You can use your imagination from there. But she told me that I made the best fried chicken she's ever had in her life, and I take that as an incredible compliment. If you knew Peaches. You would be able to understand why I value that compliment as much as I do, and that is an honest to goodness story. That is no joke.
And it's because you later went on to marry Peaches. Was that correct? That's why it was
Peaches. I don't even know if she's living or dead at this point, but she was a very nice lady. I liked her a great deal, and she put it nicely. She wasn't really into fellas.
Now, what I really want to know is when was the last time you made some fried chicken, and why haven't we had the honor of trying your fried chicken?
That's an outstanding question, E, but I think I have a very valid answer. I mean, when you're making, you called them racks of chicken, so you'd make 32 pieces of chicken, at a clip, okay. 4 chickens worth of chicken, and the industrial level in which you could make fried chicken was incredible. So, I mean, I think lack of tools, lack of resources is probably what's holding me back the most. I mean, if I had a 10-gallon
vat of oil,
deep fat fryer, we would all be heavyweights.
Well, I think that's a bit of the key there too. You got to remember that if you're at a place with the fryers and the ingredients and the chicken, it's a little different than trying to whip that up at home.
And I was damn good at it too.
Sure, but yeah, you talk about it with such reverence and such, almost joy.
I mean, I hang a lot of my personality on the fact that I was the damn best fried chicken maker from the years of 2000 to 2003 at Hardee's.
So it's safe to say you've never made it again since Hardee's.
That is very safe to say.
Oh, that's interesting because...
Go out when I'm on top, I suppose.
I think probably around the time that you were working, you're a fair bit older than me. We may not have stated this on the show. Tori is 53 this year, is that correct? And I'm famously a wee lad of 23.
He's just graduated first grade.
Right.
Yeah,
where he just passed his manners class.
But no, I think
he unfortunately acts like he's 8 sometimes. But
I think when I was, I think around 2003 time when you were working at Hardee's, I think I was a wee lad going with my friend to Hardee's, and the thing we would do there was we get the biscuits because you could get biscuits for a quarter.
Excellent biscuits.
And because that was what you started to say about that roast beef is their thing, which I'll defer to you since you work there, but I disagree with a little bit. I think they have one roast beef sandwich there, and the rest is all burgers.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, it used to be primarily more of a competitor to KFC. They definitely had some burgers. They were the pioneer of the thick burger for what it's worth. But their thing used to be fried chicken and biscuits. And they did have damn good fried chicken, but
all
I
true, yeah.
rarely ever got it.
How about the peach cobbler? You ever give that a spin?
No.
Excellent.
That sounds good. I mean, if you have good biscuits, peach cobbler's like, I mean, that biscuit topping on it,
Excellent.
So good. And it's hard to find people that have good biscuits, especially up north here.
Us Yankees don't got good biscuits.
You go down south, they know what they're doing.
Cracker Barrels. So we got Cracker Barrels in and around.
That's true. They do. I'm not as much of a fan of their biscuits. I do like biscuits in general. That's one of my top 3 favorite foods, I may have said before, but I think Cracker Barrel falls a little shy. Bob Evans, I think, has really good ones.
Excellent.
I actually like McDonald's biscuit, oddly enough. I think their biscuit is one of the better biscuits in the area. Get-Go's is terrible.
Sheets isn't no good either.
Burger King's a no-go.
Hardee's does have good biscuits, but I stopped going there because, I might have been wrong. It might even have been 10 cents for a biscuit back at that point.
You're making me hungry for some cheap biscuits.
Back in 1948 when he was a youngin'.
But I want to say that back when I was a wee lad,
biscuits cost a nickel.
I used to be able to get one for a halfpenny. But anyways, no. You used to be able to get them for, I believe it was a quarter. I could be wrong about that. But eventually they stopped doing that, and my friend and I speculated it was because they thought we were scamming them by getting nothing but biscuits and no other. We could also get a free water. So for the cost of $1, we would walk out of there full of biscuits and water, and
they're losing money.
They're losing money. That was, I believe, a loss leader for the chicken.
They're going to scrap the entire nationwide biscuit program because a couple of JOs are ordering 4 biscuits at a clip and a water.
Well, at that point, you got to remember, I was I wasn't sheltered, but I was from a small town. I didn't know Hardee's was a chain. It was a revelation to me to learn that Hardee's had multiple locations.
I still don't believe that Hardee's has multiple locations. I don't believe you.
The closest one that I can think of off the top of my head is Breezewood. So to give you an idea as to how close or far away that is. I mean, you're on the turnpike a ways.
Yeah, to get to Breezewood, for
yeah.
Sure. I mean, I know Carl Jr.'s is definitely a chain, but again, it's on the West Coast.
It's all that big yellow star that smiles at you.
That's right.
Again, they are the same.
Wait, they have the same
mascot.
Star. They are exactly the same except for name now. Same logo,
Get it
same
right,
owners.
E. There's going to be a test on this afterwards. I'm glad you got your notebook out.
So I believe E had some steak for dinner, and I had Hardee's. I had the big Hardy, the Western bacon cheeseburger, and chicken sandwich and some fries for my girlfriend. What did you have for dinner, Tori?
Boy, I broke the budget tonight. I had a bowl of ramen noodles, chicken flavored, and an avocado, and a nice cold Mountain Dew.
Isn't that like college food? Shouldn't you be like a little bit beyond that now?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I haven't had ramen noodles in a long time, and I don't play with that cup of noodles garbage. That cup of noodles is absolute trash. You know what I'm talking about in the styrofoam.
It at least has the freeze-dried vegetables.
It's trash. I mean, there's light years of difference between the cup of noodles you get, the Manchurian or whatever, and then the ramen, which is the in the cellophane, right? When you get the packet, no cup of noodles. I would starve before I had a cup of noodles.
Are you saying the noodle itself you don't care for?
I don't like the dehydrated vegetables at all.
Okay.
I think that's garbage. There's absolutely something different with the noodles. No question. No doubt.
Don't taste it.
I don't know about that because they're made by the same brand. A lot of them are the Maruchan, I think, noodles, and also they sell the cup of noodles and the plastic packages.
Cup of noodles ain't my thing, man. And I've been really having a hankering for that recently. I don't know why. And I was tasked with going grocery shopping this week. So guess what?
Ramen noodles made into the cart.
Right.
All right.
We got Oreos. We got all the good stuff. So I got plenty of ice cream. Yeah, so that's how that goes down. But that's what I had for dinner tonight. A long story, even longer. I had ramen and an avocado.
I bought my obligatory one time a year can of, or whatever, a carton of ice cream.
Nice. What flavor?
Chocolate chip cookie dough. Pretty good.
Okay.
It's
Did you eat the entire thing in one sitting?
I did not.
That's how ice cream is best served.
Definitely. Did they get cheap on the chunks of cookie?
They did not.
Good.
What brand was this, did you say?
It is a brand recommended to me by a friend of mine who is also lactose intolerant. So it is lactate.
Jesus Christ.
The lactate, milk-free, lactose-free. Yeah, exactly.
Taste-free.
No, it tastes really good. I'm surprised.
Oh, yeah, they load it up with sugar to cover up the lack of milk fat.
Yeah, probably. It's sweet. It's very
sounds
sweet.
Horrible. I don't know how I feel about that. To me, it's worth taking the lactate pill to get the real stuff.
Roll the dice. Just eat the ice cream.
I don't know. I had, actually, earlier, not this week, I think it was last week, I had Rita's custard for the first time.
That's really good.
That was really good.
Yeah,
and it turns
really
out it
good.
didn't make me sick.
Nice.
So I looked it up to find out why. And it's because they actually cook the milk and add eggs to it.
Okay.
while they're heating it.
Hmm.
And that's what gives it egg yolks, I think specifically. That's what gives it like a real buttery, creamy, and that's what defines a custard.
Okay, that was going to be my question for you.
And then once you heat up milk, it kills all the lactose, like all that like enzyme. I don't know, whatever. It does something to it. If you cook milk, I can eat it.
Yeah, I was actually with you on that custard trip. Tori neglected to join us for that.
I don't think I was invited, for starters.
You were invited for starters.
But I was predisposed. That's one of the things to tend to.
His toilet, speaking of.
Changing the subject directly, something that I found particularly interesting and very poignant is that the Mars rover lander, Perseverance, landed today.
Yes, I heard about that. That's very exciting.
Yeah, isn't
And
that
in fact,
wild?
they have a drone with that.
Yeah, that flies around. Isn't that neat?
Pretty cool.
There's microphones on it, so they're going to know what Mars sounds like.
They could do the first podcast from Mars.
Nice. They're going to ship up, take us up there. Put us on Mars.
That's where we belong, is fucking freeze-dried on Mars.
Yeah, but I thought that was pretty neat stuff.
Did you know that there's a company in Pittsburgh that launches lunar landers? Have you heard of this?
I have not.
No.
I'm not going to mention them for legal reasons, but yeah, there's actually a local company that one of my friends just went to work at that launches. They have got a big NASA contract actually, and they're right in Pittsburgh.
They say, this is a big robotics town.
Absolutely.
And a big,
Well, I know they've been calling Pittsburgh the East Coast Silicon Valley, essentially.
Oh, yeah,
Pittsburgh is trying to become the next,
aside from
tech
New
hub.
York and Boston and all
I don't
those
know.
other.
I understand those are big cities and whatnot, and you'd think that they would be bigger than us, but I think it's mostly a tax structure or whatever that's bringing more business to Pittsburgh.
A lot of mill workers, a lot of steel mill workers.
You're going back a few decades,
we're
though,
coming
to be
up,
honest. I mean, Pittsburgh was it's how Pittsburgh really survived losing all those blue collar jobs, is they really did embrace technology and higher education, Carnegie Mellon. I mean, that's a big part of Pittsburgh's history. So
That's true. Also, several autonomous driving companies here, I believe.
I mean, it makes sense for anyone who's driven through and around Pittsburgh. If you can get a car to drive by itself through Pittsburgh, it can drive anywhere else in the country.
That's fair. I saw an Apple, no, this was not an autonomous vehicle, but I saw one of those Apple mapping cars. You know what I'm talking about? Ones with a little ball on top.
Right,
on the
yeah.
top.
I usually see the Google ones. I've never seen an
So
Apple
I
one.
ran them off the fucking road. Android for life.
They can afford it. Apple can afford it.
I stole the car. Speaking of legal claims. So tonight we have a couple of mustards for your listening pleasure. We have Coleman's original Norwich English mustard, and we have the Mr. Mustard's sweet, hot Mr. Mustard. I didn't plan this, but if you notice that the packaging here is kind of interesting, that they're almost kind of complementary there. They both make heavy use of the yellow and red fonts and layout, and they're kind of almost inverted there. The Mr. Mustard has a red lid. The Coleman's has a yellow lid, but they go nicely together. They almost look like they're similarly branded.
Yeah, I would agree. I find it interesting when mustards do this. It's really a smart tactic, but the label is put in such a way where to read it right side up, you can, the nozzle is on the bottom.
Which is in complete contrast to the Mr. Mustard because it's in a jar.
It doesn't have a nozzle.
Right, doesn't have a nozzle. But I suppose I don't know. Is that always true? Because I don't think yellow mustard is that way. I think
No,
yellow
French is,
mustard.
the typical yellow mustard isn't. But you see this every once in a while. Interesting. It's smart. I guess it really depends on how runny or how viscous the mustard is in there. If you really have an issue trying to get out of it, gravity being on your side while it's in the fridge forever and ever would certainly do it some good. But yeah, I find it interesting. It's smart. It doesn't seem like it's going to be an issue here with this Coleman's because it does seem to have some viscosity.
Right. And I wonder if maybe, I don't know if Heinz pioneered that or not. They do. Also, they have a research facility here, another thing.
True.
They, I know, have an inverted bottle for both ketchup and for their mustard, and that may be what you're thinking of there, too.
I've seen it before, yeah.
Absolutely. I see it for the ketchup a lot.
Most people have probably seen the Coleman's more as the dried mustard you find in the little tins with the baking spices. That's where I'm more familiar with it. This is the first time I've ever had the Coleman's mustard in a liquid.
I feel like I'm a mustard novice here by you guys' standards, but I don't think I've ever had Mr. Mustard or Coleman's. Those are brand new names to me.
I've certainly had Mr. Mustard before. I'm not certain if it's in this particular form, but I remember the smiling chef caricature on the front label there for certain. So that's certainly an old favorite, and we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Right.
But Coleman's is new. Coleman's is certainly a new experience for me, and we'll get into that shortly, I'm sure.
Interesting enough, though, when he said that about a dried mustard and used for cooking, my exact thought about this sauce is that it's really best to cook with, to mix in, because it's such a strong flavor.
Another thing I wanted to mention really quick while we're kind of on that same topic, about giving a little bit of description on the sauces here. The Coleman's, I believe, only makes 4 products, and I believe they're all variations on kind of the same thing. They make their mustard in a liquid form in a glass jar. They make it in this squeeze bottle that we got here tonight, and then they make it in the tin form, the dry one that we had discussed. And there's one more format, and I think it's basically the same thing, but they're essentially the same base ingredients, I believe. Like, there's no real, and that's kind of just their thing. Okay, so they have 2 different sizes of the dried mustard as well, but that's literally the 4, as far as I know, that is the 4 products that they make for mustard.
So just to be clear, so every one of those 4 are Norwich Original English.
I believe that is their thing. That is their mustard that they make.
I wonder if that means that they're primarily, I wonder if they're a bigger deal in England or overseas versus here in the U.S.
Well, originally they were, I think they've moved their manufacturing facility, I believe, to Germany now, I want to say, but originally they were in Norwich. But what it's referring to there, the English, is the style of mustard, if I'm not mistaken.
The type of mustard seed that this is made from?
Not necessarily mustard seed, but when you grind the mustard seed and mix it in with the other ingredients, how you grind it and what you add to it determines its style.
Okay.
For example, a lot of the bright yellow mustards that we have were originally colored with turmeric. And that's why they have that kind of bright. I mean, these ones both have kind of a dull yellow color, as we're getting to.
Yeah, I can see that, I guess. I mean, the Coleman's is, I think, a little more, actually, true yellow, I think, than the Mr. Mustard.
On a similar line there, the Mr. Mustard has other varieties. They make a variety of products. So,
and in particular, we have here the Sweet Hot. Do they just make a regular, just a regular vanilla everyday mustard?
Well, let's see here, really quick on the website. They have a Mr. Mustard Original Mustard. They have the Sweet Hot. They have the Mr. Mustard with honey. And I think there's some other ones too, maybe some different formats.
Nice.
But yeah, they do have some other varieties. Why don't you describe a little bit more of that Mr. Mustard there? We talked a little bit about the Coleman packaging,
well, all right, it's a little more dulled out, like I said, a little more brown to it. You definitely have, as Tori mentioned, the caricature of a chef and with his top hat, which is an interesting little side note. Other than that, it's just a everyday jar of mustard, 10 calories per serving.
Low fat, low cal mustard.
Mustard's good, healthy for you, I think.
They say turmeric's real good for you.
They do. And it's funny that you brought up turmeric, because actually that's what's inside Mr. Mustard, and yet it's less yellow than the Coleman's, which has no turmeric. So that's, I don't know.
No mustard either.
No mustard either.
The anti-mustard.
No, there's a whole lot of mustard going on in the Coleman's, I think.
Oh, yeah. There's certainly a lot of mustard to be talked about here. I think they're both terrific. Really, I like them both. The Mr. Mustard certainly speaks a certain nostalgia to me. I can certainly remember growing up. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I can certainly remember growing up with that jar in the fridge. Big fan of mustard on all types of things, whether it be pretzels or ham sandwiches. I like a pretzel stick, maybe with a stick of cheese, and you dip those both into either of these 2 mustards. I prefer Mr. Mustard though, but
absolutely, that's a winning plate of munchies / you call it dinner even.
You can, yeah, right, exactly. Depending how lazy you want to get, but sure, yeah. I mean, that's terrific. I like both of them a lot. I think they both would have equally good applications. I don't think, unlike the sauce we did last week, where, if you recall, we were desperately searching for something that this sauce would be even halfway decent on, even remotely acceptable. Whereas in comparison to these 2, I mean, I could name 2, 3, 4 things right off the top of my head without even giving it a thought, that these would be absolute home runs for it. So I think it's just terrific.
I have to say, I fully agree. They are both delicious sauces. But it's interesting to me. I'm curious, when you hear mustard, what's your number one sauce you think of? When you hear mustard, do you think of Mr. Mustard?
Probably not, no. I would probably think of your generic brown mustard that at least I would apply to a hot dog, maybe with some relish and onions.
You're thinking brown, though.
So you're thinking brown, like a Dijon?
If we were playing that game, you play at the head shrinkers where, you say a word and now you say the next thing that comes to mind.
Rorschach. Oh, association test.
Whatever that is, yeah. That would be my answer.
Just a brown. But is there a brand name? What brand name comes immediately to your head? French's. I mean, French's.
Probably, I would have to say
Grey
French's.
Poupon.
Yeah, probably.
Dijon.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot more. I mean, and I'm not a mustard. I shouldn't say I'm not a mustard eater. I enjoy mustard a lot. I just don't go out and buy it, oddly enough. One of those weird things. I just don't think of it, I guess, as a condiment to have on hand at the regular. But when I do, I think of Grey Poupon, French's,
right.
Dijon. Those are the top three I think of when I think of mustard.
And I am a fan of that brightly colored yellow mustard.
Absolutely.
Now, interestingly, the French's mustard is a brand name, and there is also a type of mustard called French mustard, French style, like that is English style for the Coleman's. French's is not in the typical French style for mustard, though. That is more of a typical American style.
Right, agreed. And obviously, again, maybe why I don't think of mustard as a condiment, a go-to condiment in my mind is because we grew up with that yellow mustard that you get at like McDonald's or any basic restaurant fare. You ask for mustard, you're gonna get this yellow, absurdly bright, unearthly, and the flavor. I don't know what the flavor is, but it isn't something that I liked as a child. It's something I can tolerate now as an adult. It's, when it comes to these kinds of mustards or even a Dijon or Grey Poupon, I've had better mustards later in life and been like, oh wow, this is good. This is edible. Where I won't do the yellow mustard. I still don't.
I think with the yellow mustard, you're getting a lot of vinegar. I think that's kind of one of the keys is that Americans like that acidity more so than they like the actual horseradish spice and
that's true. I think I may have mentioned on here before that I, as a child, did not care for vinegar. I didn't care for malt vinegar on my fries. I wasn't a fan, but now as an adult, no, my taste buds have changed.
Your palate has become incredibly more complex.
This is a bit of an aside, but a little maybe a fun fact for some of our listeners that might not know this about, while we're still talking about mustards in general. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but a lot of the modern vegetables we eat are actually derived from the wild mustard plant. So, for example, the root of the wild mustard plant was kind of cultivated and developed into rutabaga and turnip. The stems they cultivated into kohlrabi. The leaves they managed to modify into cabbage, collard greens, kale. The flowers, a couple different varieties there, but like your cauliflower, your broccoli, and your broccolini, things like that. The buds they turned into Brussels sprouts and cabbages, and then obviously the seeds. They have uses for those too. And then we eat the mustard seeds, which makes most traditional mustards. But a lot of plants owe their lineage to the wild mustard plant.
That's fascinating.
That is truly fascinating. Good old mustard seed, the humble mustard seed. Could you imagine?
Isn't there a spice shop called the mustard seed or something like that? Isn't that a thing? Maybe I'm totally off basis.
I don't know. You got me there.
It could be. It sounds like a British thing. So, Eric, which of these sauces did you try first?
I tried the Mr. Mustard first. Just like it was advertised, it said, sweet, hot mustard. First thing that hits you is sweetness. And then there was a little bit of a kick. Really good flavor throughout. A little sweetness, a little vinegar. And then I tried...
And you're attracted to the chef on the front, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a handsome gentleman.
It's a mustache I'll never be able to attain.
Can't forget it.
Chefs are famously good lovers, I believe.
At least good cooks, you'd hope.
Good. You tried the Coleman's after that?
Tried the Coleman's after that, and then my taste buds were the heat sensing taste buds were well shot after that. So then the sweet hot was sort of lost. The heat was lost on the Mr. Mustard. I kept going back to it, and it just tasted like sugar and candy in comparison. I was like, I could eat this with a spoon now, because the Coleman's will light you up with mustard flavor, but a heat. It has a real intense. The Coleman's mustard. When I say I'm getting heat, I am actually, I don't know if you guys are getting this or not, but my brain is saying that's hot horseradish, which doesn't have any horseradish in it, but that's what my brain was going to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think we discussed this a little bit. I definitely get where you're coming from with the horseradish in terms of kind of like that spice and the kick and the heat there. I wasn't getting that kind of like sinus attack that I normally get from which I actually like. But I normally get that from horseradish. I was getting a lot of the spice from that, but I wasn't getting that sinus attack. So, and I think that's just a wild mustard, not wild, but I think that's just a raw mustard kind of taste.
It's good. It's flavor. It's flavor to the max. And I think I know I said already that I think Coleman's mustard would be excellent to cook with. A little squirt of this into a dish while you're cooking will just make that whole dish have a nice mustardy, flavor to it, and it won't be so overpowering. Because by itself here with a pretzel, it's kicking.
They may be on a nice ham loaf. That would be terrific.
Sure.
Well, heck, I mean, I'd make the ham loaf, coat it before it went in the oven, and I'd give it a dip afterwards. I'd be totally okay with that.
I'd even say a pierogi. Something that's a nice, real, doughy, potatoy, very almost bland, but you could put, have this mustard on the side to dip your bite in. Oh yeah, a little crispy on it. I think that tastes good.
You ain't gonna catch me eating pierogies, dude. No way.
Oh yeah, I know, that's right. You hate
no
pierogies. I love
way.
pierogies.
Another famous Pittsburgh thing are pierogies.
Yeah, that's a story for another time as to the aversion to pierogies.
I think that's podcast appropriate, but we can save that for later.
If we ever get on pierogies again, I don't know.
The one thing I had thought for the Colemans in particular was maybe an egg roll. To me, it reminds me of that Chinese mustard you get. The mustard that you get with Asian cuisine.
I don't know if I'd go that broad with it, man. I think you hit it right the first time. Stick with the egg roll.
Yeah, I agree. To me, that's what that kind of mustard is made for. Really, I think that's a direct analog to it there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if I may hit back on the Mr. Mustard there, I think you boys mentioned it has a big bite up front, big vinegar up front. Of course, I know we've mentioned this, I think, every week thus far, but big time vinegar fans. So that's great. And personally, I have an affinity towards mustard in a glass jar as opposed to the squeeze. I don't know. I like spreading it with a knife. I can't explain it. But there's a couple other brands out there that are in the glass jar that you spread. Durkee's, of course, being one of them. That's fantastic.
We'll have to talk about that.
Durkee's.
It's like a mustardy, mayonnaise-y type spread. Really good
it's
on lunch meat.
Zestier than that, though. It's not it's got some zest to it, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It's good.
That's interesting. That sounds like something I'd be down to try for sure.
It's quite good.
I think you did try at my house. I had a big jar.
I think you did, too. You might have been inebriated.
Yeah, you may have been a little toasted, but that's okay. That is okay.
Just to be clear though, I do want to say I think I'm in complete contradiction to you on how that mustard hits you up front. The Mr. Mustard was actually sweet and smooth up front, and then you tasted the heat, and then it going back to heat or back to sweet, a little bit almost like molassy, or it tasted almost like molasses on the back end, or maybe a touch of vinegar. But that's that. Yeah. I just have to say, I don't know what you were getting up front on that one, and why you thought it was so hot.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm spot on with E on that one. I was getting nothing but sweetness initially, and then the heat crept up on me later. Now, the Coleman's I thought was kind of a bit of a bitch slap of heat.
Yep.
A little bit of a smokiness I kind of detected there.
I didn't, but
that was maybe,
I can see.
Maybe I was getting that just from I was envisioning English, and I was thinking, leather and pipe tobacco or something. Maybe that's why I was just kind of imagining a little bit of that. But I thought I tasted a little bit of a smokiness up front.
Now, you also tried it with a turkey meat.
Right. I also did try it on a piece of leather, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not.
Yeah. I can't pick up smokiness as much as other people as easily, not unless it's barbecue or something that is just, laced in smoke. If it has a touch of smoke, my mouth isn't complex enough.
Well, you have inundated yourself with vape smoke even as we're recording,
Absolutely.
So that could possibly be.
That's right.
True, too.
Your taste buds could be compromised.
You had the opportunity to try liquid smoke. I mean, that's pretty,
I've seen that.
It's pretty upfront.
Yeah,
it's
I've
pretty.
seen it.
It'll slap you. You'd know it.
That kind of sends me back to the Hardee's spray that Tori has been so vehemently denying exists.
I've loaded more hamburgers in that charbroiler than
into the liquid vat, into the smoke vat.
The sprayers are built in. He didn't know it. They were just misting it in the meat off the back end.
Well, I think they send those patties kind of pre-formed and all that. It's not like you're making the burgers. They've already got the grill lines welded into them by the time you put them there. So I did want to mention that the Coleman's does also come in a glass jar. That's one of the 4 preparation styles that we had, but small. How big is that jar there, Eric? You're in front of it.
Coleman's you're asking about.
Yeah, the Coleman's.
5.3 ounces.
Okay, that's a 5.3 ounce jar. And I think the normal ones, what are the normal ones? 12, 16 ounces?
Right, that's easy, yeah.
I think that was a $5 thing of mustard, that tiny little packet. So if that tells you anything, I don't know what the jar would run you, but I would have to imagine it would be roughly $8 to $10 for a jar.
So to be clear, since we read the size of the Coleman's, the size of the Mr. Mustard is 7.5 ounces, so a little bit bigger.
I think that one was closer to the I want to say under $3 range. Now, but also these, and we've discussed this, but these are sauces that a little goes a long way.
No doubt.
These aren't dips. Truly, these are things you put on a thin layer of for some flavor.
A sweet hot was pretty darn good as a dip. I could jam on that.
I would dip
pretty heavily.
I would dip, absolutely.
We should mention that we tried these with some turkey sausage dippers and our typical waffle pretzels. What do you call those ones with the crisscross things? The little pretzel.
I think waffle was a very fitting
They
name.
look like a
fitting name. I don't know what the actual
catcher's
technical
mitt,
name is.
almost.
Yeah, that lattice.
Yeah, lattice pretzels. That's probably most appropriate.
Called.
A lattice, a square lattice. And I don't think they've gotten stale yet, so we can probably keep eating those for like 2 to 3 months, I think.
Just heat seal them, you'll be fine.
That was an interesting point we failed to mention. Our friend Eric has become the archiver of the snacks here, and he has to hide them away from himself in his house in order to
not devour them.
in order to facilitate that, though, his choice was to use a heat sealer on the already opened package to seal it back up permanently
That
from
poor
himself.
bag of pretzels. That's been through the war.
I think I might do it again this time. We'll see. Try and keep that freshness locked in. Why not?
I don't know if we mentioned this before on the podcast, but Eric has a real, almost a food hoarding problem where he tends to take if the leftovers are free, he will take them.
I hate to see food go to waste.
You are a step above a freegan.
He chooses to eat the snacks outside of the podcast. He will be, much like Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden, he will be cast out of the podcast.
I'll just replace him with a whole new bag. You won't even notice the difference.
We'll
You'll just
notice
heat
they're a
seal
little
them
bit
again.
fresher.
Well, that's the point. You have never actually purchased food.
I know. I was talking to one of my coworkers. I said, I'd really try and work it so I can only have to go grocery shopping once a month.
It's insane.
No fresh groceries last a month.
Sure they do. You just cut off what's bad. The rest of it's still good.
God, no wonder why you're always sick.
Yeah, I know.
Speaking of cutting off what's bad, I bought a giant eagle the other day, a horseradish root that I intend to plant.
Exciting.
Get myself a little wild. Well, not wild.
Plant it somewhere you don't care, because you will never get rid of it.
I've got a lot of space like that. I'm gonna plant it in your yard.
I already got some, and I can't get rid of it. Not that I want to.
Tori, did you give us your take on these sauces? You feel like you gave a pretty good...
I touched on Mr. Take These Broken Wings. I touched on Mr. Mustard there for
Let's
a
all
moment.
sing.
Yeah, why not? I didn't mention at all about Coleman's. I liked it most definitely. It had a definite, to your point that you made earlier, when you go to the Chinese restaurant, you get the hot yellow mustard with the duck sauce. Incredibly reminiscent of that. It even smelled like it. I thought the spice, whatever it was, I didn't get horseradish. To reiterate what you mentioned, there was no sinus. I didn't get any sinusy reaction to that as I would at the Chinese restaurant.
Right.
But it was intense, whatever it was. It maybe not pepper, maybe not vinegar, but boy, did it grab you hard. I have in my notes here that I sort of made a cough medicine face. I took way too generous of a pretzel, and the bitter beer face. Remember the old commercial? My face got all contorted. Not that that's a bad thing. I think that is a badge of honor for any sauce, really.
It's funny. I think I almost want to dare you guys to just put a slather of that on your tongue and then inhale. Like when I breathe, it went straight up my nose, my sinuses. I
usually get a pretty good when it's horseradish. I usually notice it pretty quick, even with a mild amount. And I really wasn't getting it there. It is a similar type of spice, which I think we've talked about before. Whereas the mustard is the same kind of spiciness as horseradish, but it's not horseradish.
Sure.
I would say it's almost closer to a black pepper type of kick, but I think that's just the mustard.
I don't know. I don't ever think of black pepper as particularly hot either. But I mean, I guess I don't exactly just grab a whole teaspoon of it and start trying to chew on it. But.
Well, it depends how fresh it is, because the stuff you typically get in the tins or like you steal from your workplace, that is essentially just black dust.
To be fair, I stole the pepper grinder, the whole grinder from TGI Fridays, so.
In that case, you're getting fresh ground pepper.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you take like a teaspoon of that, you'll definitely notice what I'm talking about. Like it definitely slaps when it's fresh and when you get enough.
Definitely used it in my marinade for my steak.
To that end, we're talking about horseradish and things like that. I found it incredibly interesting that this is considered an English mustard for whatever reason. I mean, outside of its origins, which the essay is coming on it, but I found it interesting that this is considered an English mustard, whereas, getting back to this Chinese egg roll type idea where I would absolutely on a totally blind taste test, I would 100% put that in the Far East category, the Asian category.
Ooh, now you're really touching on something. Okay,
More so.
British invaded
Right. Colonialism.
into China. Is mustard even native to China?
That's a good question.
I know
there's
it's
the whole
native.
spice trade.
Right. The whole spice trade and everything. We might call it a Chinese mustard, but I don't know if China has mustard native to it.
Here's another thing, though. What if the English stole it from the Chinese? That's another possibility, too.
Certainly is.
That is why, the whole Silk Road, that was for spices,
Absolutely.
That is the famous joke about English people, is that they invaded the entire world for spices and then refused to use any of them. Famously bland food. But no, I'll just read a little snippet here off of Wikipedia because that's as far as I care to go for researching purposes. But English-style mustard, it is bright yellow in color with a relatively thick consistency, which I think we had noted. It is notably stronger than many other mustards and is particularly suited to flavoring as a cooking ingredient, but is also used as a table condiment for cold and hot meals. And I think that pretty much sums up our exact feelings on it. It's strong, a little bit thicker. It is brighter yellow than the Mr. Mustard, right?
Yep. Oddly enough, maybe I'm going way off bases here, but I would say that I think the Mr. Mustard just tastes more Americanized, maybe. It tastes... It's more of a crowd pleaser is what I'm getting at. This is something that I think someone may have mentioned already that, this is the Mr. Mustard, what you feel like or would think you would pair with a hot dog. Good old classic American ballpark Frank, put on some, personally, this is definitely quite a few steps up than the traditional French's, ballpark yellow mustard crap that I don't care for, but I think this would taste really good on a hot dog. More so than the Coleman's, which I think is just a lot. It hits more, you need something more to offset that mustard flavor. Like we were saying with an egg roll, or...
I'm thinking this Coleman's mustard would excel, really, I guess, in any deep fried food, really, whether it could be deep fried mushrooms, deep fried cauliflower, I think would be really, really good on that, sticking with the egg roll. I know you've made this point in previous podcasts with the acidic cuts through the fat, and helps that out. So, not to say that it's bad. I think they both have a time and a place and a medium, and I like them both.
To me, the Mr. Mustard has that initial sweetness, which I don't think would be nearly as good
on fried food.
Yeah, for fried food.
For fried veggies, no, I have to agree. Counterpoint there, I don't know if I want something as strong as that mustard to actually overpower the veggie. I wouldn't know if I'd want Coleman's mustard on just fried cauliflower, because it would just be like I'm eating fried mustard.
Yeah. And I get that. I'd have to imagine, though, when you're eating fried cauliflower,
who's really eating it for the cauliflower flavor?
Yeah, and let's paint the picture here. You're probably not in some 5-star fine dining area. You're probably at a greasy bar. You're probably 3 or 4 beers in. Probably a touch hungry. You end up smashing the whole plate. That's what I envision.
That's true.
Now, interestingly, as we discussed, I kind of feel like dipping fried cauliflower into that mustard would be almost kind of similar to having like a chicken omelet, where you are essentially cooking the mother in the unborn youth.
Oh.
Because you have that evolutionary stage of the wild mustard, as we discussed earlier, that's the cauliflower dipped in its predecessor as
now
the mustard.
I see where he's going with this. I was a little lost at first, too.
I was lost big time, but okay, you tied it together.
I was mainly just trying to lose visitors with that analogy, but...
Yeah, turn off some of the hosts with that analogy.
Tori has left, as a matter of fact. He has his keys in his hand. Tori, do you want to kind of start us off with... And remember, this doesn't have to be necessarily a competition. We typically tend to, use Heinz ketchup as kind of a mid-baseline for our ratings here. And this isn't a competition between the two of them, so you can feel free to evaluate them separately. But you want to give us your ratings for these?
Yeah, I absolutely intend to rate them separately because they're two separate things. I have a soft spot in my heart for mustard. There was a time in my life where I had every bit of 9-10 different bottles of mustard in my refrigerator at any given time. So mustard is absolutely one of my favorites. I know I've mentioned that before. Certainly better than ketchup. So just based on the fact alone that it says mustard on the container, for me, that's an automatic 7. And keeping with not rating them comparatively, sure, we'll take them independently because I think they stand on their own merit. Getting back to the idea that I can name several foods that either one of these mustards would do great on. So with that being said, I like Mr. Mustard for a number of reasons. Boy, I don't know. Again, soft spot, 9.5. Why not?
Wow. 9.5 for the Mr. Mustard. Do you want to give us a rating for the Colemans now, or do you want to go around and go to E for the Mr. Mustard first?
Sure, might as well round me out too. I like the Colemans. I mean, I can't sit here and tell anyone that I didn't like it for really any particular reason. I like a big bite. I like whatever that spice was, whether it was horseradish or something else. I liked it. Not certain what it was, but that's okay, and I'll take more of it. Boy, I mean, that's close. 9. I mean, just under the Mr. Mustard. And I think the reasoning behind the half a point discrepancy is to your point exactly. And I think you summarized it nice. Mr. Mustard, just for me, it got that America in a jar, the hot dog, the mustard, the onion, the relish. Boy, you can't lose.
Absolutely. I mean, just jump in with my numbers. I'm thinking I'm going to give Mr. Mustard 8.5. And I'm only holding it out because I know there's like some really complex sauces out there, and I mean, I don't even know. We talked about making our own or whatnot. Like we can create some funky concoctions that just really blow that flavor meter higher. So, I mean, if we're talking just sticking to one solo trick of hey, this is mustard, or even sweet hot mustard, I just don't know if I can get it quite into the 9 range. But 8.5. What was that? 8.5. I'm maybe changing the numbers right now. 8 for the.
It's okay, it'll stand.
And then 8 for the Coleman. So. Right behind it, excellent to cook with, to flavor up a whole dish, or, you just want to get some slapping heat on, whatever it is you got something that's really flavorful, like we said, the egg roll, or, again, you could probably put a hearty tablespoon of that into a whole pasta salad and get a wonderful mustard flavor throughout the whole pasta salad.
There's an idea.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Do you guys ever have those mustard pickled eggs, or like a mustard pickled cauliflower? Do you think something like that maybe?
Mustard pickled.
I've never heard of
those.
Really?
No. It sounds intriguing, though.
Neither one of those you've ever had.
No. I've never even heard of it.
Really?
No.
You've never seen in grocery stores those yellow eggs or like the yellow cauliflower?
Isn't that peppercini?
Well, they have pepperoni too, but that's not mustard. That's yellow the pepperoni themselves are flavor.
Oh. See, I'm just so turned off by that pepperoni. If it's...
Really?
Yeah, I walk away.
I'm actually growing some of those in my garden. I'm a big fan of pepperoncinis.
God love you.
That vinegar, to me, those are like the embodiment of like spice and vinegar and stuff. I love those.
Yeah, I'll pass on the pepperoni.
Papa John's always has the pepperoncinis.
Yeah,
one of the,
absolutely.
And that pepper
those.
Is actually one of the few peppers that I'm not saying few. I mean, going back when I was a kid, things were new and pungent or too flavorful.
Right.
Hot peppers. I'm trying to think what it was. Well, oddly enough, I did not like banana peppers on the pizza. Well, I'll eat them now on a pizza. But I liked the pepperoni that came in beside the pizza. So, anyways.
My favorite thing about those pepperoncinis was always that they were filled like a little vinegar balloon. And you bite into them and you just get that tasty vinegar and that like mild pepper flavor. Is amazing. I also wanted to say featured prominently in the Olive Garden salads, pepperoncinis. But yeah, no, I'll have to either buy some or make some. We can talk about those sometime. But they have mustard pickled eggs, similar to the beet pickled eggs that I've made for you guys before.
And those I've had multiple times and love.
Yes, they're just like that, except for they're mustard, and they usually have a little bit of a spice to them. They also make it with cauliflower. The cauliflower usually also has some cayenne-type flavor in it to give it a little bit of heat as well.
So I think I may have told you this once before, but I had Cajun-styled hot pickled quail eggs that also had some vegetables inside there, straight out of Louisiana. They were hot, and they were good. They were very unique, but I know they for a fact they did not have mustard in the name. They had mustard flavoring in there with all the other spices, but I can't say I've ever seen. Well, I certainly haven't seen hot pickled quail eggs up here.
No.
And I haven't seen mustard pickled eggs in the store, but not that I've ever looked for them.
Okay, I'll have to see if I can find some.
That is very intriguing. I would be I'd be interested to give that a spin.
Okay, well, I guess I'll give my rating here. Now, I think we had talked about this a little bit earlier as well. Sometimes the foods we have here to taste these on don't really do the sauces justice. And we discussed, so far, give you guys a little look behind the curtain here, but we have been tasting these before the start of the podcast, and we've been using the snacks that we had kind of on hand to do so with. And like I said, tonight we'd use the turkey snacks and the unnamed pretzels type that we've discussed. But we're saying maybe this would work better on a hot dog or maybe an egg roll or something like that. So maybe we'll try these a little bit sooner in the week to give us a little bit more of a chance to kind of think about and maybe try on something they're more well suited to. And I think that's what I'm getting at, that I think that's going to kind of influence my review, because to me, the Mr. Mustard, me looking at that versus a lot of other mustards I've had on like a hot dog or something, I would try that, but to me, I think it's coming in, more like at a 5. Like, I would be just equally happy having ketchup. The Heinz ketchup is that on there.
To the Mr. Mustard.
I think so, yeah. The thing about sweetnesses and mustards, to me, I don't need that. To me, a mustard is more of a vinegar, maybe some heat there, spiciness.
I love me some honey mustard.
I'm just flabbergasted. I'm at a loss for words.
I'm a big fan of like the what do they call that? Like that grainy Dijon.
Sure.
I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, this one I don't know.
I can't believe you put on par with. I mean, okay,
that's lunacy.
I guess ketchup in its own right
Ketchup's not
has
bad.
some complexity to it.
Well, it's Heinz ketchup is mainly a vinegar sugar salt bomb with a
The acidity
tomato
of tomatoes.
aftertaste,
It
essentially.
happens to be red. Yeah.
Right, happens to be red. And that's kind of how I feel about this. Like, I'm not getting a whole lot of mustard to me. It's got sweetness, like the Heinz ketchup has. It's got a little bit of heat. But to me, I'm not really getting a lot of what makes mustard to this, and I prefer the vinegar to the sweetness overall. So I'm going to stick with that. I think I'm giving that a straight 5. And if I want to be a little controversial there, I'm okay with that. You guys blast me on social media for that.
I can't believe that. I will blast you myself.
Now, the Colemans, I'm actually going to give that a little bit higher, just because to me, I could see myself having that on an egg roll. And I might actually go pick some of that up for egg roll purposes, because I'm a big fan of that Chinese type mustard. And I'm actually going to say, probably for the Colemans, probably a 7. To me, I like that kick, that heat, and a little more of those, the lack of sweetness there was really doing a little bit more for me.
Interestingly enough, did you read the ingredients on this Mr. Mustard before you made that assessment?
We didn't.
No,
get to
I
that,
actually didn't.
That
We
segment
didn't. We didn't do our famous reading of every single ingredient in both the jars. No.
So, if I were to sum up what you had just said there, see how well I can remember something that was spoken about, 60 seconds ago.
Okay.
You said it was
listeners are going to think you look like an idiot.
Probably, because you said it was similar to Heinz ketchup, where it's a vinegar and sugar bomb, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, you said.
And salt bomb, yeah.
And salt. Oh, wow. So, literally, the ingredients are distilled vinegar, water, and sugar. First 3 ingredients in Mr. Mustard.
I was getting a lot of the sugar, which doesn't do it for me on a mustard.
Then the next one is mustard seed and then salt.
Okay, well, like I said, to me that is almost a direct analog, more so even than maybe your typical yellow French's mustard to a Heinz ketchup, which is not bad. Like I said, we have said before, I'm a huge lover of ketchup. I've had a passion for ketchup ever since I was a small child. My dad said that was one of my favorite side dishes, was ketchup. He had to advise me not to use the French fries as a spoon to get more ketchup into my mouth.
Oh, I've been guilty of doing that myself.
So it's not by any means, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying in my mind I would equally be happy with that as ketchup.
I do like them more than ketchup.
Appalling.
But I do love ketchup too. I mean, I don't know. That's interesting. Maybe we're using the wrong.
That might be an unpopular view. History will remember us. Probably not.
Somehow,
probably not remember us all. Actually, if I'm being honest, but that's a little bit of an ego there. But yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts.
Did you give the number for Coleman? Did I miss it?
He did. He said 7.
I think I said a 7 for Coleman.
And just because it has more heat and more mustard flavor.
To me, that was more of like what makes mustard.
Sure.
That's more of what I'm looking for in mustard. Plus, like I said, I can definitely see myself throwing that on an egg roll. Maybe some other, I don't know about some other uses, maybe on
roast beef sandwich.
Yeah, I'm thinking actually maybe on like, not a roast beef, but maybe more like an Italian hero kind of thing, maybe, because a lot of times you lose the mustard in the other ingredients there, especially if you've got like a mayo or something. If you wanted to kick up a mayo, I think putting a layer of that Coleman's on there would really kick it up a notch.
Or the mayo would help to balance out the Coleman's. Either way you want to look at it.
Yeah, you've got a little more mellowness from that. So
a little give and take there for sure.
Right.
Yeah, definitely I could see that being good. I think that's going to wrap it up for our review of these mustards here. Mr. Mustard's sweet and hot mustard and Coleman's English style, Norwich English style mustard.
Again, to be clear, I think these are more unique flavors of mustard too. I don't think these are the people's go-to when you say mustard.
Definitely not the go-to. Definitely not the go-to.
That adds to the interest level, I would hope, for our listeners.
Eric, you got any words of wisdom for us here, sign off.
Remember your hot pads when you're dealing with stoves and ovens and hot pans.
Aloe vera.
Sage advice. Sage advice.
Tori, you got a...
As a matter of fact, I do. I'm not short of words here at the moment, but of course, today we talked about mustards that in some of our opinions, I'm looking at you, but in some of our opinions, this mustard treated us really, really well. And I think if we take a step back from that and we should start treating ourselves well, I think we should start taking care of ourselves a lot more, making sure you're eating well, you're sleeping well, and you're just generally taking care of yourself because you are worth it. But that's all I got.
Well, I think that's going to do it for our review. All right, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for stopping by. Wow, what a show. Don't forget to drop us a line. Our email is saucespoken@gmail.com. Why don't you stop on by on Twitter? We're at saucespoken. We'd love to hear from you. Send us a recommendation or a request. We'd be happy to hear from you. And finally, on Instagram, we take goofy pictures every once in a while. We like to throw them on there. That's going to be Sauce Spoken Official. Please share us with your family and friends. Give us a review, a subscription. It would be an honor. Or just a little note down there at the bottom. Just let us know how we're doing. That would be terrific. We are Sauce Spoken. Really glad to have you here tonight. Thanks for listening.